So, guys, today our topic is the wrist or the carpus. The wrist or the carpus is the region between the arm and the forearm. The wrist or the carpus consists of the complex of eight small carpal bones. In wrist or carpus, we mainly study two topics. The first is the flexor retinaculum, and second is the extensor retinaculum. So, firstly, we have to understand that what is a retinaculum. A retinaculum is a thickening of a deep fascia. It is actually the thickening of the deep fascia in the form of strong bands. As we know that there are three types of fascia in human body. The first is the superficial fascia, which is present under the skin directly. The second is the deep fascia, which is present around the muscles, and the third is the visceral fascia, which is present around the organs. For example, the fascia around the lungs is called as the pleural fascia. So what is basically a retinaculum? A retinaculum is a thickening of a deep fascia. It is actually the thickening of the deep fascia in the form of strong bands, and this retinaculum is present around the tendons. What is the function of the retinaculum? The function of the retinaculum is that it holds the tendons in place and stabilizes them. The retinaculum is present in several areas of the human body, but now we are studying the wrist or the corpus region, so we will only study the uh, retinaculums present in the wrist or the corpus area. So here we are concerned with the wrist or the corpus. So in wrist or corpus there are two types of retinaculum present. So the first retinaculum is the flexor retinaculum, and the second is the extensor retinaculum. So we have said earlier that in the wrist or the corpus there are two main topics, that are the flexor retinaculum and the extensor retinaculum. And for this we first have to understand the retinaculum. So we have briefly defined the retinaculum, that what is retinaculum. Now we will proceed towards the flexor and the extensor retinaculum of the wrist. We are here concerned with the wrist. So now firstly we will study the flexor retinaculum. F stands for flexion and R stands for the retinaculum. As we have said earlier that the function of the retinaculum is that it holds the tendons. So what is the function of the flexor retinaculum of the wrist? Its function is that the what is the flexor retinaculum of the wrist? It is the retinaculum that holds the tendons of the flexor muscles in position at the wrist. As you have said earlier that the function of the retinaculum is the holding of the tendons in position. So the flexor retinaculum of the wrist, as the name signifies, is that uh, uh, it will hold the tendons of the flexor muscles in position at the wrist. In the flexor retinaculum topic, we also study the carpal tunnel, because the flexor retinaculum and the carpal tunnel is associated with each other. So we will study the carpal tunnel in the same topic. So the flexor retinaculum stretches across the front of the wrist or the palmar sides and converts the concave anterior surface of the wrist into an osseofacial tunnel, which is called as the carpal tunnel. So what is the function of the flexor retinaculum here? It actually forms the roof of the carpal tunnel, and this, as we have said earlier, that the flexor that the retinaculum itself is made by the thickening of the deep fascia. So the flexor retinaculum present in the wrist is actually formed by the thickening of the deep fascia of the forearm. If we talk specifically, then it is the deep fascia of the forearm. As we have said earlier that we will study the carpal tunnel uh, in the same topic of the flexure retinaculum because they are associated. So the carpal tunnel, what is the function of the carpal tunnel? The carpal tunnel allows the passage of the tendons of the flexure muscles of the forearm and the median nerve. It actually forms a passage for the flexure muscles of the forearm and the median nerve. Now we will talk about the attachments of the flexure retinaculum. Medially, it is attached with the pisiform and the hook of the hamate bone. Laterally, it is attached to the tubercle of the scaphoid and the trapezium bones. Proximally, it is attached with the deep fascia of the forearm, and distally, it is attached with the palmar epineurosis. Now if you look at the diagram, this is the flexure retinaculum, which is present on the anterior or the palmar side of the wrist or the carpus. This band is actually the flexure retinaculum, and it forms the roof of the carpal tunnel. This flexure retinaculum is proximally attached to the deep fascia of the forearm. Here is the deep fascia of the forearm to which it is attached, and distally it is attached to the palmar epineurosis. This is the palmar epineurosis, which is also the uh, deep fascia of the wrist of the sorry, it is actually the deep fascia of the palm. So this is the medial side and this is the lateral side. Medially, this flexure retinaculum is attached to the pisiform and the hook of the hamate bone. This is the pisiform and this is the hook of the hamate bone as labeled. And we know that we know that the on the lateral side of the wrist there are present the scaphoid and the lunate bones, and the flexure retinaculum is attached to the uh, tubercle of the scaphoid bone and the tubercle of the uh, hamate bone on the lateral side. Sorry, on the lateral side it is attached to the tubercle of the scaphoid and the trapezium bones, because we know that on the lateral side of the wrist there are two bones which are the scaphoid and the trapezium bones. So as we have studied earlier the attachments of the flexure retinaculum. So here is the important point, that the attachment to the trapezium bone. The attachment to the trapezium bone consists of the two parts, which are the superficial and the deep parts. And between these superficial and deep parts, it encloses the tendon of the flexor carpi radialis in between. And this flexor carpi radialis invaginates its own synovial sheath. Now we will see its attachments through another diagram. This is the cross section of the hand showing the relation of the tendons. So if we see here that the attachment to the trapezium bone consists of the two parts, that is the superficial parts as we have said earlier, and this is the deep part, and it encloses the tendon of the flexor carpi radialis in between, which is enclosed in its own synovial sheath. Now we will study the contents which pass through the carpal tunnel. So there are nine structures that pass through the carpal tunnel. That are the four tendons of the flexor digitorum superficialis, four tendons of the flexor digitorum profundus muscle, one tendon of the flexor pollicis longus muscle, and the median nerve. So these are the 10 structures which passes through the carpal tunnel. Some people say that the flexor carpi radialis is the another structure which pass through the carpal tunnel, but actually it is present in the roof of the flexor retinaculum and is present between the two attachments of the flexor retinaculum. These are actually the nine structures which passes through the carpal tunnel, and this area is the carpal tunnel, and the nine structures passing through the carpal tunnel are the four tendons of the flexor digitorum superficialis muscle, four tendons of the flexor digitorum profundus muscle, and one tendon of the flexor pollicis longus muscle, and the median nerve. So these are the 10 structures which pass through the carpal tunnel, and this area is the carpal tunnel between the carpal bones. Now we will study one by one the content of the carpal tunnel. The four tendons of the flexor digitorum superficialis are arranged in two rows. Number first is the anterior row, and number second is the posterior row. The anterior row goes to the middle and the ring finger. It goes to the middle finger and the ring finger. Its posterior row goes to the index and the little finger of the hand. But the important point here is that having anterior and posterior rows, the tendons of the flexor digitorum superficialis muscle become parallel to each other when they become distal from the wrist. Now looking towards the diagram, it is evident that the tendons of the flexor digitorum superficialis are arranged in two rows. The first is the anterior and the second is the deep, or the first it is superficial and the second is the deep. But when they become distal to the wrist, they become parallel to each other, as we can see that from the diagram. You can also see that the anterior row goes to the middle finger and the ring finger, and the posterior row goes to the index finger and the little finger. So the second is the four tendons of the flexor digitorum profundus. They are arranged on the same plane despite of the flexor digitorum superficialis which were arranged in two rows. They are arranged in the same plane in the same row, and they lies deep to the flexor digitorum superficialis tendons. The tendons of the flexor digitorum profundus lies deep to the flexor digitorum superficialis tendons. And the important point here is that all these eight tendons invaginate a common synovial sheath. They are covered by the common synovial sheath. So from the diagram we can clearly see that the four tendons of the flexor digitorum profundus are present below the tendons of the flexor digitorum superficialis. These are the tendons of the flexor digitorum profundus which are present beneath or deep to the flexor digitorum superficialis, as we have studied in the theory. And the tendons of the flexor digitorum superficialis and the tendons of the flexor digitorum profundus are enclosed in the same synovial sheath. This is the synovial sheath, and all the eight tendons are enclosed in the same synovial sheath. They are enclosed by the common synovial sheath. Number third structure is the single tendon of the flexor pollicis longus. It is present on the lateral part of the carpal tunnel, and it invaginates its own synovial sheath. It is invaginated in its separate synovial sheath. So from the diagram we can see that the flexor pollicis longus is present on the lateral side of the carpal tunnel and is enclosed in its own or separate synovial sheath. The blue is the synovial sheath in which the tendon is closed. We will study about the synovial sheath later in another video. The fourth main structure here is the median nerve. The median nerve is present deep to the flexor retinaculum between the tendons of the flexor carpadialis and the flexor digitorum superficialis muscles. So from the diagram we can see that this is the median nerve. This yellow is the median nerve, and it is present between the tendons of the flexor digitorum superficialis and the flexor carpi radialis tendons. As we have studied about the flexor retinaculum, we have studied about the carpal tunnel. Now we will study a disease which is related to these structures. What is carpal tunnel syndrome? The as we know that in the carpal tunnel there are present the flexor tendons. There are 9 flexor tendons present in the carpal tunnel, which are the 4 tendons of the flexor digitorum superficialis, 4 tendons of the flexor digitorum profundus, and 1 tendon of the flexor pollicis longus. The degenerating or swelling of these flexor tendons of the carpal tunnels, these nine tendons of the carpal tunnel flexor tendons, they cause the narrowing of the tunnel, which causes pressure or it stresses on the median nerve. As we have studied earlier that the median nerve is present between the flexor retina uh, that the median nerve is present between the flexor carpi radialis and the flexor digitorum superficialis muscle tendons. So when the uh, carpal tunnel become narrowed, then it causes a pressure or compression on the median nerve, and this causes pain in the hand and tingling in the hand, and this disease is called as the carpal tunnel syndrome, CTS. So due to this disease, the carpal tunnel syndrome, the median nerve is an important structure which passes through the carpal tunnel. So from the diagram you can also see that this whole area is the carpal tunnel. So the median nerve is present between the tendons of the flexor digitorum superficialis and the flexor pollicis and the flexor carpi radialis tendons. So when these tendons swell, they cause a pressure on this median nerve, and this cause pain and tingling in the hand, which is called as the carpal tunnel syndrome.